All right, you guys. This is an extension of Simple Genetics 1. Okay, John, we're going to talk about dominant red right now. Go ahead,
Right.
John.
Dominant red, homozygous cocks. Cock, as I think most of us all know, the cocks carry two colors. When you get a dominant red cock, as John calls them, or they have two colors for red only. And if you take a pair like this, two red checks, and mate them together, you got a good chance that you're going to get a dominant cock. Now, if you use a dominant double factor cock, this one is just a single factor, he has blue. But if you use a double factor cock, then every cock out of this mating, or every pigeon out of the mating, will be a red check. Or maybe they carry recessive red or red bar, but there will be, all the cocks will be double factor red cocks. So I've never been a real fan of any cock like grizzle or dominant red that would dominate a loft. So if you did have a cock that was double factor red, I think the best thing you could do with him, if you wanted to use him, was mate him back on a blue hen. That way at least all the cocks will still be red, but they'll all carry blue. So, but like again, to state the factor, if this was a dominant red cock, you made her to a red hen, everything you get will be red with no blue factor whatsoever. You might get red bars. If they carry bars, you get a recessive red, but underneath they would all be, as John calls it, dominant red. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is there's been a lot of misconceptions on recessive red. Now, so we got a recessive red cock here, and we got a recessive red hen, even though she's a model. So the only difference with a model, they carry a pied factor. And so if you make these two birds together, no matter what, you're going to get a recessive red. If you get any other color but recessive red out of mating two recessive reds together, and if you breed in an open loft, you know you have a nest jump. Because that's one thing that's genetically, when you make two recessive reds together, you will definitely get a recessive red. Now, the thing is, what I personally don't like is mating recessive reds together. Most recessive reds have kind of a hard feather, and if you make two recessive reds together, another thing that happens, your feather quality will get worse per generation as you go along. I believe that the ones that have the pied factor in them, the models or spangles, whatever you want to call them, they have a better feather quality to them. I think it has something to do with the pied factor. I'm not sure. And again, if like in my family is dominated by blues, your recessive reds seem to come out kind of a dull color recessive red instead of a real bright. I think if you mated birds that carried a lot of bronzing together, then your recessive reds would be a little more bright, more like this one, and not like this one. And so like I say, if you'd like to mate them together, mate them together, but I think that's kind of going in a bad direction. I don't think you want to get too many recessive reds. But now with recessive red, and let's say recessive red was dominating your loft. Now recessive red is one color that is not real difficult to get rid of. All you do is you make your recessive red to a different colored pigeon that you know is not carrying recessive red. So let's say, for instance, this blue bar hen here, we knew for sure that it had no recessive red in the background anywhere, and we mated them up. Now, you cannot get a recessive red unless this bird carries recessive red. If this bird carries recessive red, again, you'll get recessive reds. But that's what you got to figure out. You see, recessive red, remember, is a paint job. Now, I know this one's mother was a red bar, so his father was a dark check, so that's a sex-linked mating. So you know right away that he's either a red bar underneath there or he's a red check underneath there. So remember, recessive red is a paint job. It is not a color. They're masking a color underneath, either red check, They could even mask grizzle. They could mask a whole lot of things. And that's kind of anything else, Johnny, with recessives?
I think you covered it.
Okay, so remember, if you want to get rid of recessive red in your loft, mate them to birds you know don't carry recessive red. But one thing about it now, when you do this mating, and if this bird doesn't carry recessive red, the youngsters will. So recessive red is kind of here to stay once you get a bunch of them, but you can breed away from it.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay, we're going to continue a little bit with recessive red here. Now, let's say you have a family of red checks and dark checks, and you really don't have many recessive reds. Now, recessive red can carry on from one generation to another, and what happens maybe 3 matings down the road, you mate 2 birds together that both have a factor for recessive red, and even though you haven't had a recessive red in, 4 generations of matings, if you mate 2 birds that carry it, it's possible that you can get a recessive red. And bars work the same way. Birds can mask bars and carry it for generation to generation. And as long as you don't mate 2 birds together that carry bars, you won't get any bars. So down the road somewhere you mated 2 red checks together, and boom, a red bar pops out. Well, you know that those 2 both carried bars. Remember, they both have to carry recessive red. If they're not recessive red, they both have to carry bars if they're a non-barred pigeon. So with grizzle, which is a little different factor, every parent has to be a grizzle. Grizzle can't carry from one generation to the next. Once you take the grizzle out of your bird, you will not get grizzle. Grizzle has to be, one of the parents have to be grizzle. Same with spread. One of the parents has to be a spread. Spread being lavender or black. We started to mention grizzle or tortoiseshell. Very interesting. I think what has been written before, that tortoiseshells kind of are checkers and grizzles are kind of bars. And the thing is, I think where a lot of problems come in with tortoiseshells or grizzles is when mating them together. If you mate them together, each generation the birds will be lighter and lighter. And then again, if you mate 2 grizzles together, 50% of those babies are liable to be double factor grizzle. And again, double factor grizzle, if you mate that to anything, the first generation is always grizzle. So grizzle can dominate a loft, and like John brings up a good point. If you like to keep some grizzles and tortoiseshells in your line, mate them to your self-colored pigeons. I think a lot of people have maybe had a grizzle line and didn't pay much attention, and didn't really pay attention. They were still creating grizzles, and pretty soon, if one of the parents is not a grizzle, you can't get one, or tortoiseshell or grizzle, same kind of factor. So what I suggest is that you take like a red check, mate it to a grizzle, and then you keep doing that. Bring the grizzle or the tortoiseshell in like one piece at a time, but never put 2 of them together. And I think you don't want to get a whole loft full of grizzles, because it's easy to do, and if you mate them together, remember, each generation will become lighter and lighter color. Pretty soon you'll have white grizzles with bull eyes. We wanted to bring up a little bit on feather quality. Again, we mentioned mating recessive reds together. I believe that the feathers get harder, and I don't think you want to stay away from harder feathered pigeons. I think they're stronger flyers probably, and I think it's very important to mate, if you do like a hard feathered pigeon, mate it to a softer feather. Personally, a lot of people mate dark checks together and the feathers become hard, and they say, uh-oh, strong flyers, they won't roll, and I think there's some truth to that. I think it's very important that you pay attention to feather quality and try to work with pigeons that have a softer feather. Like, you can make dark checks together, I don't see any problem with that, as long as that feather quality is real nice. It's a nice silky feather, not real soft, but silky, where the feathers kind of flow one into another and they kind of feel slick in your hand. Try to stay away from mating hard feathered pigeons together. And again, real soft feathered pigeons you don't want to mate together again, because then the feathers will be sticking out kind of like, and the feathers won't sit nice on the body. So I think feather quality is something to pay attention to. I think if you get too hard a feather, then your birds are going to fly too much and not roll enough. And if you get a softer feather, I think you're going to get to the point where they're going to not fly good for you. They might roll down. So I think feather quality, to keep it in the middle of the road, is very, very important in a family of pigeons. Now another thing has come up. Let's say you have a lot of red checks that are like these, pretty much T-pattern red checks for sure, and dark checks they almost like they're blacks. If you want to loosen that up a little bit and get your patterns open, then you make your checks to bars. The T pattern is the top of the rung, the bar is the bottom of the rung. So when you cross them together, you can get all this range of pattern in between. If you take two T-pattern birds and make them together, you'll get all T-patterns. If you made all barred pigeons together, you'll get all barred pigeons. So if you want to kind of open up your pattern and you know, like I say, get them so you can really see the blue checkers and the red checkers, so they don't look like they're just one solid color. Bars, red bars, blue bars, remember, make them to the T-pattern ones if you need, and it'll open everything up. You'll get some bars. Remember, both birds have to carry bars. But if, say, this bird doesn't and this one does, in between you're going to get all kinds of checkers. And I think the open pattern checkers they're just prettier than the T-pattern. And a lot of people actually believe that when you go to too much T-pattern, they get too seldom. So there's something just to mess around with and see what you get. But if you want to open up your patterns, remember, bar's the bottom of the run, and the T-pattern, like in a dark check, they almost look like they're black. The only way you can tell they have like a ribbon in their tail, that they're dark checkers, and that'll open everything up in between.
Yeah, I think that's really important.
I think it is too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you want to go with all T-pattern type of pigeons.
Okay. John, I think we covered this end, and now we're going to get into something else.
Johnny brings up a point that Bill Pinson made a statement about flying birds from 9 to 15 years old, and you know, they were able to fly youngsters and stuff that were the same or better than the parents. You know, I wish we all lived in a place where we could continually fly our breeders and not worry about losing them. Of course, things have changed and we really can't do that. But I think it's very important that when you get a pair of birds, purchase a pair of birds, whatever it is, really test them out. Do they produce youngsters that are as good as they were? If you happen to know how good the parents were, or you just taking someone's word for it? But I think that's where part of the hobby is kind of going in a wrong direction. Is every good pair of birds don't produce good pairs of birds. And I think whatever family you have is to work them and see if you can put pairs together that produce birds that are better than they were. And then you're going in a forward direction. If you keep saying, well, gee, this one's just about as good as the dad was, well, maybe that mating's not that good. I really think that a lot of people are starting to pay attention to that. And like I say, just to keep crisscrossing birds and stuff into your family, or trying to create a family from birds from A, B, C, D, and E, and F, I think you might be okay the first year with hybrid vigor, but then when you start breeding your own, I think you get into real trouble. And a statement was made by some of the old timers that if you bring in one wrong bird, you could ruin 30 years of work. If you do bring in a bird, and try to bring in a bird that's better, if you see a bird that rolls better than the birds that you have at home, that's one to take home. But yet, take that bird and put it in an individual loft, breed it to one of your hens, and see if that bird really does work. And I think sometimes if you take a cock bird that you get from somebody and you say, well, gee, this was better than the ones I had, and you throw it into your open loft and it jumps a couple of hens, and pretty soon, you don't know what you got. So again, if you breed in an open loft, bring home a hen. A hen can't get you in trouble. And pay attention to the youngsters, and if the youngsters turn out to be good, well, then you're off to a good start, and then you can add that blood to your family.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Johnny brought up a point. We brought up the point about bringing in outside birds, but even more important than that, within your own family, you can actually screw up your own family by using the wrong birds. And I think that's what makes this hobby so difficult. So you've got to pay attention to which one of your birds work. Remember, not all good spinners produce spinners, and that's the thing I think we're getting away from. That we're bringing in a couple of real good spinners, and we made them together, and then we're trying to figure out, what are we doing here? Oh, none of these birds are working out. What happened? These two birds are the greatest two birds I ever used. Well, and that's what, again, that makes our hobby difficult. Remember, within your own family, and I think a lot of things happened in the past where these guys had families, and for years they tried to keep the family as pure as they could. And they bred off a pedigree, and they bred off of birds they could sell off of these pedigrees. And they mated the wrong birds together, birds that were not tested out, and just bred for years on the ground, same as, just like, and down out of. It just doesn't work, guys. And that's what I think makes this hobby so difficult, and that's why certain people are very good at this. They're always flying a nice kid of birds, while others can't seem to put a kid up that's worth a damn. So, you know, these are some of the things. Are you screwing up within your own family? And then what somebody does, then they bring in an outside bird. And if you can't figure out what you're doing wrong with your own family, don't bring an outside bird in until you figure it out.
That's heavy duty. All right.
What else, John?
We're there.
Okay, always remember that a statement that was made way back when, that every bird you breed out of has to have a value. So again, what's the value of that pigeon? Is it because you paid $100 for the pigeon? Is it because somebody gave it to you and said it was a good one? Is it because you picked it out of the air and you said, man, what a nice pigeon, it's better than the ones I got at home? Remember, they got to have value. Every mating you make should have some kind of, what am I doing here? Why am I putting this mating together? And I think, and it's not easy, it's very difficult. And if we put down wrong matings, we got to figure that out. And like I say, if you have undesirable pigeons, birds you don't want anymore, don't try to sell them off to somebody else. Get rid of them. Get rid of them. Send them to the bird shop for $1.50, or just get rid of them, because passing on undesirable specimens to someone else, you're not doing anybody a favor. The only thing you might be doing is you're giving your pocketbook a favor. But please, you know, when you let go of a bird, sign your name on that pigeon.
Oh,
Okay?
that's heavy duty.
This pigeon is a good one, and you can breed this pigeon, and it's going to get you something. And that's hard to do. No one's going to get rid of their very best birds, but you know, if you got a couple of young birds out of a real nice pair, and you want to pass them on to somebody else, and what you do, and I think is very important, if you pass on birds to someone else, during that breeding season, when the gentleman or the lady's flying the birds, give them a call. Say, how's that bird working out for you? If they say, man, it ain't working out worth a damn, give them another pigeon. Let them, if you want them to try one of your pigeons, or they want to try your pigeon, give them the best pigeons you could possibly deal with. And keep in touch with those people. Let them know we're doing good with these birds. And if you get a bird from someone else and the bird is doing you real good, call that person up and thank them. Say, man, you gave me a nice one.
Mm-hmm.
And because a lot of the birds, again, that we get, Monty Neville told me one time, when a gentleman said 80% of the birds I breed are usable. Monty said to me, and I think Monty Neville, you all know, was one of the top guys that ever flew pigeons. He said, well, I stock 1 or 2 birds a year, and I breed over 100 pigeons. So that kind of gives you a good idea.
Yeah, we get the message. You know, John, you said some important things this morning. I hope that people benefit from this video this morning. It's really fascinating, fantastic that people used to sign their name on the pedigrees. Remember that?
Yeah.
They would sign their name and date it. Remember?
Oh yeah.
That was serious.
Yeah. I mean, you know, the thing is, I always, when I let go of a pigeon to someone, and they call me a year later and say, man, I really got a couple of nice birds out of your bird, that makes me feel good.
Mm-hmm,
I mean, you know, and when someone calls you up and say, man, those birds you gave me just didn't work, that doesn't make you feel good. You know, to me, I say, man, let me try it a couple more if you're interested, you know? And like I say, again, a lot of times that first generation is hybrid vigor. It's what that next generation does. And that's when you kind of start proving out your pigeons, because, you know, anybody can put 2 birds together and create some role. But then what do? How do you mate the youngsters? And it's like I say, this hobby is not easy. It's very difficult, and I think that's why we see certain people are master flyers, and other people try. And if you don't have time to sit and study your birds and try to figure out which ones are working, which ones aren't, it's awful difficult. If you have a job and you're working tons of hours, and in the winter around here, we can't fly anything. We just put a young bird kid out just a few minutes ago, and a Cooper Hawk was here in 5 minutes trying to get him. So, you know, work hard at it, and like I say, try to do the best you can, acquire the best birds you can, and if you let go of some birds, don't let go of the calls. let go of a good bird. Like I say, it's like you're signing your name on that pigeon. Say, this is a good one, and I'm giving it to you.
Right on. Don't hide. Don't hide your best and then sell the rest, you know. Don't do that. You know.
Yeah.
We've experienced this.
Oh, yeah, we all have.
They go hide their best. Hey, buddy, go hold these birds over while I sell all these, you know.
Yeah, just like,
I won't put this in there. Okay.
Yeah, this one just right. This is down out of these stuff. Same as just like down out of. Look at the pedigree. It's got 514 in it 17 times.
Yeah. Well, this is the basis of, so people can learn the colors, man, because you want to buy a red checker out of a pair of recessive reds. That's
just
not
remember,
going to
red
go.
is always, you make two of them together. There's no way you can get anything else. I mean, they could have grizzle underneath. They could have pink underneath. They could have anything underneath. But two recessive reds made it together. 100% of the time, you get recessive reds.
Okay.
And if you get something else, well, figure out why.
Okay.
You breed in an open loft. It had to be a nest jump.
Hey, John, this is after the recording. This is something that you like. This is a new thing of you. John, can you give a shout out to some of those guys overseas that are really tapping into to the videos that you're doing, John? I mean, to benefit the young and the fancy. John, can you, there's a lot of guys that are trying to get a hold of you now that due to the videos. Can you give a shout out to some of them, John?
Yeah, I think, lately Europe has won the World Cup. They've, like the guy that won last year, have you seen the video? After he flew his birds, he got a standing ovation. I mean, that's got to be so awesome if the whole yard stands up and gives you a standing ovation after a fly. I think the guys in Europe are really paying attention to what they're doing. Of course, they don't have as many BOPs as we do, but I think that there's something going on in Europe where these guys are really, really working on trying to improve their birds. And I think they're not going out and getting a bird from here and a bird from there and a bird from everywhere and chasing after impossible dreams. I think they're working the stuff they got in their loft. And I think that's what everybody needs to do.
A lot of teamwork.
Yeah, figure out what you got in your loft. Work on those birds. And if they don't work, then you got to start over and go somewhere else. But like I say, if you acquired good birds from someone, there's something in there that'll work. And I think what they're working on in Europe too, there's this simultaneous roll, trying to get these birds to go together, trying to get, remember, a 10 is 20. And as long as it's a 10, it's I think the guys in Europe are we need to learn from them. I think they've kind of passed us up a little bit.
Okay, John, not to blow your own horn, but why do you think they're so interested in the videos that you're making, John?
I don't
more
know.
More than the United States. What's going on there, John?
I don't know. I think people are like, we're not doing this to promote, to blow our own horn. We're putting some information out here just for fun, basically. If
Good
you pay
stuff.
attention to a little bit of it, the colors, the type of the pigeons, we're just trying to help people here. And I think the guys in Europe, I hope they're watching this, and I think what happens, a lot of people here say, those two guys, they're so full of it. And it's
Abbott and Costello.
It's so easy for people in this country to say, that guy ain't worth a damn. That guy ain't got any pigeons that are worth a damn.
Yeah.
Those guys don't know what the hell they're doing. They're just bored.
They're not hardcore.
They're just bored to death. There's nothing better to do.
Yeah, I get
We're
you.
not
I
trying
get
to
you.
do it for that reason. We're just trying to put out some information, and if you can learn a little bit of the information, is fine. Because Johnny and I do this, and we sure don't know everything there's to know about pigeons. But like I say, we were talking about it last night. We have 100 years between us of raising these funny little characters and trying to build a family, and I think through these videos we're also learning, and we're starting to pay a little better attention. And I think that's all we need to do. Everybody just needs to pay a little more attention to what's going on in their own backyard. And man, have fun with your birds. Have
Yeah,
fun
as it
with
should
your
be.
friends. Have some people over, have a couple of cocktails, have a barbecue. Go squeeze a few pigeons. I know a lot of guys, you don't squeeze them, just fly them. Learn a little something about your best rollers. Pick them up, handle them. Because, rollers that roll properly have a type of their own. And once I think you learn that type, and I always call it roll type, I think you can move forward. But if you keep on breeding those birds that people are judging out here. You know, they roll 2 feet and they get a 15. You know, and I'm saying, my God, what are we doing?
You're going into part one
let's
already.
score pigeons that are scoreable. And,
Yeah.
And
yeah.
let's learn what good pigeons are.
Yeah, yeah. All right, Big John. I want to do a shout out to all those that are tapping in and watching Earthbird One production and watching some of the videos that we're putting in Roller World and on Earthbird One production. We thank you. Like I told John, we're taking note that a lot of folks outside the USA are really tapping in, and we want to say thank you. We want to say thank you to those in the United States that are tapping in too. We're hoping that that it will continue to grow, and we're not trying to make a dollar on this. You know, I know that people thought that was the way we were taking it, but that's not the way we're taking it. We just want to help out some people out there, you know, and if we can reach and help one individual, okay, just put them on that little right track. It's paid the note for us.
And like we say too, you know, if you can get some information about pigeons, books, there's a lot written on pigeons, and from all of this information, something will pop up in your mind and say, hey, that's a darn good idea. And, you know, do that. Study your pigeons, read as much as you can about your pigeons, learn as much as you can about your neighbor's pigeons. Go over to the guys' houses that are winning these flies, see what they're doing, and not so much taking their birds, but talk to them about what do you do to get a nice kid of birds together? How do you feed them? And you know, and how much time do you spend with them? How many hours do you watch them in the air? And you'll be surprised at some of the answers you get. And like I say, it's to fly a nice team of pigeons, you've got to have time and you've got to call hard. Remember, they're not all good. You know, some people might think they're all good, but they're not. And again, emphasize on the thing, if you get some that are not good, just get rid of them. Don't pass them out to the next guy and have the next guy try them, because I think a bad pigeon is a bad pigeon. And what's that old saying, Johnny? A bad one eats just as much as a good one.
A bad one eats as much as a good one. Okay.
So, you know, good luck, and let's all hope we can improve the pigeons and improve the whole hobby. Camaraderie, I think, is a thing that, for sure, I think in our area we're missing a little camaraderie. I think there's too much inbiting or infighting, whatever you want to call it.
Well, yeah, you know, money's the root of all evil, man. I mean, you know that. I know it shouldn't be that way, but... And then competition creates walls, you know, and...
You know, and if your neighbor kicks your butt in a competition, go shake his hand.
Yeah, go buy him a hamburger,
Don't
you
walk
know?
away and say, that judge didn't score mine right.
Yeah.
He sure gave that guy a lot of breaks. You know,
Yeah.
it's a toy department of life. Keep it that way. Keep it fun. Keep it light, you know. Just have fun with your birds.
All right then, Big John. We're done here.